Next day, I just love that the vacuum bag is still compressed pretty well all around. I'm going to pop it out of the bag and see how these guys did. And just find out how well the veneer stuck. Should have been good, hopefully. Fingers crossed. So I'm going to set you down here and see how we do. Good on this side. Good on the other side too, I think. How'd you do? A little bit. Otherwise good. Yeah, it's on there well. A little bit of crackiness up near the edges, but for the most part, I'm pleased. Yeah. Really feels good. I managed to avoid massive seam pinkiness here, I think. A little bit over there. Just need to be careful with those overhangs. Yeah, really good. I'm pleased. I'll take it. Feels good here. Got some glue, but it seems like it stuck pretty well. Some crackies. Some overhangs. Okay. Excellent. It's time to square up the panels. And the way the veneer went on and the trapezoids and things like that, I've got overhangs of veneer in some spots and not overhangs in others. So it's all cattywampus. So I've got to get square first. So I'm trying to maximize how much of the panel I can get cut. And so what I'm set up here is, it's handy that I have a sliding table saw that I can clamp something to. You could do this with a sled with a runner down the miter slots as well. But I need to get one straight edge first. I'm basically straight lining this thing. You could do this a million ways. You could do this on the router with a template, with a pattern bit, or a track saw. There's a million ways you can do this. But I happen to have this handy dandy sliding saw. And so what I'm going to do is I have to find where all of my little all the little overhangs begin and end. And so I'm just taking the straight edge out of my small square and I'm buttoning it up against the piece of veneer on the underside and just extending its line out. And I can't see it very well. I should have done this first, but that's okay. There we go. So I'm just extending the line to this end, and then I can visually see. How else could you see something besides visually? I can audibly see this other side here. It's true, visually see is redundant. And we'll put our square back together. And so now I've got a line here so I can make sure that I'm going to hit the blade here and make sure the cut just barely takes a little bit of that veneer off the top side. And then I'm going to push it forward and just see where, oh yeah, we've got lots of it. It'll cut almost all of it. It'll cut more than that. So we're going to come back this way some. Oop, way too far. I'll basically split the blade with my pencil line. That way I'll take a little bit more than I needed to, but it's safer that way. I think that one will be okay. I'm going to take just a teensy tiny bit more before I take that cut. So about another 1/16. I just want to make sure I don't have to do this too many passes. I just want to do one cut and be done with it. And then I can do squaring up after that. Yes, this should work well. All right. So as you can see, we are ready. I'll just raise the blade enough to cut through. That's plenty. And the piece is clamped to the table, so it can't shift around. I couldn't use this edge because this is not a square cut to that, and I'd end up taking too much. So this will be my reference edge, and then we'll get the other 4 or the other three edges straight and square, using that as our reference edge. So I'm going to start this cut. I'm going to dust collection and all that stuff, but we'll make the noise. Make with the noise. Alright, that was perfect. That was exactly what we wanted. Dust collector can shut off. That was perfect. I've got a perfectly good straight edge now. Now I can use this against a fence and square up the rest. But first we have to do the same to the other panel, the lower panel. So we'll do a little swap around here. That one went off without a hitch as well. We are making loud noises. And we're now ready. We can rip them to width next. Rip both of these panels to width. So, just going to set this one over here. Let's see what our narrowest possible is. Okay, that veneer wraps all the way around there. It's about the same on that. Okay, so we're going to decide our narrowest, or rather our largest. It'll be 24 5/8 for now. We may end up going smaller when we actually cut this, or when we go to put it into the door frame, but I'm going to go for maximum yield first, and then after we'll deal with the final sizes. So 24 5/8, we're ready to do another cut. Okay, so now our panels are parallel. It's time to get them square. Break out the fence for the slider. Fence on, make it square, and then we're ready to just take an after it and try to get as big of a part out of here as I can. It looks to me like I have to see how much I need to take. It does look to me like it will. It does look like we're pretty close to square on this corner, so I'm just going to take a tiny bit from one side and see where we end up down here. I might have to do this in a couple of passes. I basically want this as absolutely long as I possibly can get it for now. So, more cutting. Okay, yeah, that last one took kind of a fair bit because it was sort of jagged, but we got it as close as I could get them. And now I'm going to do the rip fence to get the other side parallel, which should make everything square still. We'll check it after, but I think we're fine there. We ended up with a really good distance on this, a good size on this one, so we're going to try to get as big out of this as I can. So we're probably looking at, say 33 1/4 is about as long as I can get on this side. How about this side? Yeah, definitely we can do 33 1/4. All right, so first thing we gotta do is take the fence off of the slider. And that's a fairly quick operation. Just takes a second to wiggle the post out. Come on, there we go. Set the table back. And 33 1/4 we said. So now we'll do another rip, 33 1/4. There we go. More cutting. Okay, so I've got everything sort of laid out with the panels now cut to rough length. And it turns out rough length is barely enough, which is perfectly fine. I'm okay with it. It's a little tighter than I was hoping for, but I can be all right with that. That basically puts me, because I want the panel in far enough to get the arch in so that the panel goes all the way up to the arch. So it needs to come into this thing about 2 inches or close to it, since the arch is about 1.5 inches. It's not a big deal. It's no major problem. It's just a case of, oof, that was tight. So we just barely got it there, which is fine. Okay, anyways, the next step of this that I'm sort of faced with is when to cut things. I've got an order of operations thing I'm trying to work out. The profile I chose is it's an OG with a fillet on either side. The decorative inside profile that I chose is a little OG with a fillet on the insides on either end. I don't have a stick bit for this. I can only cope. No, sorry. I don't have a cope bit of that profile. I don't have the reverse of the profile, so I can't cope the ends. Typically, in like a cabinet door, you would cope and stick the profile around these things so that the rails and stiles just have the ends of the rails have a negative profile of what's on the stiles, and they just mash together and they mate. You know, one's a complete mirror image of the other. I don't have a router bit that is the opposite of the profile I've chosen. So what I have to decide is how do I make that corner, you know, where these corners happen. In some cases, people I know have done applied moldings, and I could still do that. I'd actually get back well, no, I can't. It's hard to do on this arch. It's easier if I don't do it if I don't do an applied molding, just in the case of the arch. Not a big deal. So what I've got is I need to decide, I think, whether I'm going to miter, like if it comes down to when do I do the decorative profile. If the decorative profile becomes sort of a function of the joinery, I have to do it first. If the joinery, if it's just going to get coped somehow, I'm not sure how I would cope it, but if it's just going to get coped somehow, then it's no longer a function of the joinery. It can be done last. I have to figure out just how much trouble it would be. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm struggling. Isn't necessarily the right word. It's where I'm at. It's what I'm working out. If I miter it, I have to work out what I'm doing. I have to decide if I decided to just put the profile on and then miter the profiles where they mate, so that it's integral with mitered profiles instead of coped profiles. What that would mean is all of my joinery would need to go in exactly the right place first. I would still cut the joinery itself first. Maybe. The other piece of it is if I'm going to cut the groove for the panel first or after, because when I do this rides. I would have to leave the entire profile on this surface, and cope this entire width, which is end grain. I don't like that. Don't like that, but I could cheat a little. What are my recovery options? Undercut, because the inside with failure means fixing is much harder. Then I'll go. Sure, I'm not sure I'm a fan of that, because I got to do that 6 times. I got to do it right, and it's got to be perfect. I go one shot at it. It might the fix for a failure in either tech. I mitered effect, which that is you cut the profile on and cut it away of where these things join. Failure means when you cut it away, you end up cutting it away in a miter on this side and a miter on this side. Profile doesn't match, and it just would have a tiny gap. That feels like an easier thing to pull off, like a profile level gap. Okay, so after some further thinking, I'm chickening out a little bit, just a little. I'm not going to do the integral trim molding profile onto these boards, despite having spent all that effort thickening up these side profiles. Every process that I've come up with in my head is stuff I'm nervous about. And I don't have this stuff glued up. I didn't make any test things. So I'm kind of boiling it down to comfort level and something I have confidence in being able to pull off rather than taking that risk of it may not work. So what I'm going to do, I have decided, and the biggest reason I haven't gone applied molding is because of this top. The arch on the top, I was thinking an arched applied molding, trying to miter those things or cope or whatever, get those things to join with the vertical moldings on the stiles was going to be a pain. But instead, I've decided I will do an integral molding profile on the top arch only. Everything else will be applied. That way, the only thing I have to do is cope the applied molding into the profile of the arch. The arch can just get profiled and ended a straight, just butt right into the side that's straight. Then I can apply the molding profile to the surface and cope it or miter it down on the corners of the straight corners. I'm not sure if I'll cope them. I'll probably cope them because a cope will look a lot better and it's easier to get that snug, probably. We'll see how I do on that. And then all applied on the square panel. Now, I toyed with the idea of applying the molding before when I was designing it, in the idea that I could remove one of the panels or could replace the panel. And frankly, while yes, that's a versatility, I don't see that ever really happening. So if I did the applied molding, I could just pin it on, but I'd have to deal with those pin, the pin holes, and I think that would look worse. So what I'm going to do instead is do applied molding but glue it on. So the panel will be captured permanently, which is fine. This is a veneered piece of MDF on a veneered piece of rails and stiles. Wood movement's not going to be a problem. I'm going to glue the whole frickin' thing together anyway. So I'm not really worried about being able to remove the panel. That doesn't frighten me in the least, not even a tiny bit. So in that vein, I have decided the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to build square frame and then I'll apply molding to the surface, to the inside edges. So I will have to get some more cherry out and cut a few sticks of the profile that I liked. But that would be a lot easier than having to come up with some sort of integral mitered thing. Everything I came up with just wasn't going to happen, is just not confident, and I don't feel like making a whole bunch of test things and all that stuff. So I'm going to go for an easier method of achieving the same quality, and I'm good with it. I'm totally good with it. It also, because I kept running into things like, well, if I do the miter instead of the cope, if I do a miter or a cope, I have to work out the depth of the tenon in each rail to go in. Well, that'll affect the other side and how wide the door has to be. So not only would I have to get these two miters or copes perfect as the tenon goes in and square and everything and all works, but I then have to do exactly the same thing on that side and get it exactly right so that the panel fits in. And it's the right door, and all three of them match on each side so that I end up with actually 12 joints that result in a door that's parallel. And I scared myself, terrified myself. It's just not something I feel like tackling. To be truly out and honest, I don't have confidence, and I don't want to take the time to go through a bunch of testing. This project I would rather have done and get on to building something I'd rather be building, like a guitar. That's the next project. I'm trying to get to it as quick as I can. So instead of all this integral molding crap, I've decided I'm going to do applied molding everywhere except the arch. That will make this so much easier. So much easier. Not a problem at all. So what I'm going to do now is get us set up to do the joinery that I need to do, and I need to lay out all this joinery. These applied strips, all these notches, are way oversized. We're going to cut them back quite a ways. So I'm going to work out where that is, work out the length of the tenons, how deep the mortises have to be. Go through all that. I'm going to leave all the applied pieces on. What that will do is allow there to be a groove in this. Instead of in the applied trim, I'll have a groove in here that the panel will sit in. but then the molding will go over the top of that. This is what happens when you wing stuff. So, my applied molding plan was genius and brilliant until I remembered I did not glue veneer all the way up to the edges of these because I had planned on cutting away the surface for the integral molding. I did the bottom one, I did pretty severely. There is literally no veneer here. Now I could patch it, I could cut this off. If I cut this off, my door has to get a little shorter. However, this one's not the problem. What I've decided is for this one, I'll just do integral for this one. That's no problem. In fact, I think what I will do is only do applied on the stiles. The rails all get integral. Maybe that's the way I do this. Maybe that is exactly the way I do this. Because all the problem areas are on the rails, basically, for the most part. And I think I can live with that. I think that's what I'm going to do. So the bottom I will definitely do integral because I have very little other options there. The middle is all cracked to hell, and so I have to do integral here, I think. Or I have to cut it shorter or something. I think we will do integral here. It just barely survives it, I think. Yeah. I believe the rule of integral on all the rails is going to solve my major concerns, I think. I think that's the way we're going to approach it. Okay, so we're I got the two boards clamped together. These are the two stiles clamped together. This is the inside surface, so this is where all the joinery's got to go and all the mortises have to get cut into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out for the top and the bottom, and then I'll bring the panels over and work out where the panels will end up, and then that'll set the middle, get the middle set, positioned properly. So the first thing I'll do is figure out just how much of a tenon we're going to have for the top here. So this is our top rail. The tenon is at most 5 and something, right? Whatever that is. What is that? 5 3/16. Or 13, 14, 15. 132 millimeters, something like that. So that's the widest my tenon can be. And of course, if it's going to be right up at the top, and even with the top, we have to make sure that there's some room for strength up here so that we don't lose. You can't really see that, can you? I'm so sorry. Let's see if I can get a little better. Okay, there we go. So I just want to make sure I leave some meat here. I don't want to be really close to this end grain to come down 1.5 inches. And we'll do the same thing on the other end for the bottom rail. And I'm going to start by marking this out with just pencil. And this one we'll set at 1.5 inches. Okay, so 1.5 inches from here. Put that on our end, take our square and set it up against it. And there's our line. And so we'll just doink that there. So now let's do a 3-inch long tenon. So that'd be 4.5 here. I might as well use the combo square for this part, I guess. Okay. So that should be, yep, 1, 2, 3-inch long tenon. I'm going to make this square, yeah. I think I've decided how my square situation is going to be. So we'll do that. Yeah, that'll work. Go badunk. There we go. Now I think you can kind of see the pencil lines here. These are, 1.5 inches of stock here to kind of keep things contained. 3-inch wide mortise. Or, yeah, I guess that's a 3-inch wide mortise. Or tall mortise, 3-inch long mortise. The width will be this way. 3-inch long mortise. We're going to head down there and we're going to do the bottom rails mortises as well. Okay, so we're down at the other end now. We're at the bottom side of things. We're going to measure this thing, the bottom rail. This is the bottom rail. At most is 7 3/4. So if I decide on the bottom I want to go up 2 inches, because this is a really wide rail anyway, I don't need a ton of mortise width or length, mortise length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up 2 inches on this side, and then we'll go for a 4-inch wide mortise, say 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we could do a 4-inch wide mortise. So we'll do 2 and 6, and then we'll cut that away as our tenon. So let's move this out of the way. Got my square already set for 2, close to 2. There's 2 there. And we just do the same as we did before. We just put our, I'm going to go this way. And, oh hey, you know what? Being a lefty makes that kind of a pain in the ass. I can't hold it with my left hand. So I'm going to do this so that I can get a right hand on it. Grab it with my pencil. Nope, it moved. Danged old thing, it moved on me. I think I can use my, kind of use it. It sort of works. This little guy is my eraser. Alright, let's try that again. I let things move around on me here. Yeah, we'll do this, that. Hold it there, please. There we go. There's that. Then we put this to 6 inches, so I get a 4-inch long mortise. 4-inch long mortise is plenty for this bottom rail, for either rail actually. As deep as they're going in, we could have done this with 2-inch wide ones anyways, but it's okay. 4 inches, there's 4. We put our stock that way. Just do that. Okay. Now I'm going to pull back and I'm going to get a spot where I can figure out where that center rail is going to go. So I'll bring you back here in just a second. So I'm going to grab my square. In fact, that square will work just fine. So let's move you down a bit. Make sure that you, there we go, well and truly square. I'm going to grab the mallet. My nose itches. And just tap you down the right direction here. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Come back this way. There we go. Just like that. And then I'll cinch that down a little better. Okay. So now, if we just set this against it, and we come up, so there it's set against that, and we come up 1 3/4 inches from where it is here, that'll give it enough room up there. That's how we'll do this. So I'm going to put a tiny little temporary mark right there, and then I'll move the panel out of the way, and we'll come up 1 3/4 inches from that. Excuse me, that was loud. So now we come up 1 3/4 inches from here. Sorry, that was noisy, I bet. 1 3/4 inches right there. Okay, that gets it set in 1 3/4 inches from there. Now we want to take, that's where the end of it will be. We want to come up another 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch from that, because it's got to be let into the middle rail. So let's just do 5/16. Let's see how 5/16 does. Okay. So now we take, I'll go square here. We'll just set it across that and say that is where the middle rail should begin. Right there. That will bury the panel into it a little bit. And now if we take that and see where it puts us on that panel, we're in what looks like a tiny bit over 1/2 an inch. I think the 5/16 might be the perfect amount. So this little guy is 5 inches long. We're going to do another 3-inch mortise, I think. But our board, our area is 7 1/4. Excuse me. So 7 1/4 is the entire width. So I'm going to do that first. And I'm just going to center a 3-inch mortise on this thing. So that's that. And call that good right there. So that is the boundary of the center rail. And we need to come in to find that middle. We need to find the center of that. I'm going to go get a set of dividers because that's going to work fastest. That's perfect. Very close to perfect. Couldn't really get it much better than that. And then I can put a square on it. This is center. And then we'll go 1.5 inches on either side of that. And I will do that with the dividers. There's 1.5 inches. Okay. Stick a pencil in that little divot. And this is just the coarse-ish markings. We'll get it even better here in a minute. Actually think I can do okay. The length of the mortise does not have to be awesome as long as it's positioned in a decent position, if it's located in a decent position. Okay, so that's going to be the 3-inch mortise that's going to be in the middle of this guy. Alright, so for the mortises, I'm going to reference off the outer faces of each of these two boards. So I'm only going to mark from the outside, and I'm just going to mark the center of where that mortise needs to be. And I'm just doing a simple little line across. This will tell me the location of the mortise. As long as I do all of my setups in one go, they'll all end up in the exact same spot. Okay. And I'm going to head down that way. Alright, we're on our middle mortise, and it's just the lines between these two pieces, so we'll start here and stop here. We'll do the same on this side. We'll just keep referencing our reference face. Just like, oh, I went way too far. Don't need to go to that point. We stop right there. I'm going to get rid of these other lines. And then we'll go do the top mortise as well. There's only 6 mortises we got to do here, so not too bad. I'm going to do these mortises first. We're going to put a groove in here as well, but I'm going to do the mortises first, and then because they're going to be bigger than the groove will be. So let's go down to this side and mark it for the top rail. Okay, ready to mark that mortise as well. We'll just take our marker and go and do it. I think I'm going to do a 1/2 inch wide mortise, or I'm going to cut the mortise with a 1/2 inch router bit, and then I'll cut the tenons to fit, or size the tenons to fit. So, keep that. All right, so we have this contraption you see here is my routing setup. So I've got an edge guide on the router set so that the depth when referencing this face or this face puts the bit right where I want my mortises. The plunge is about enough to get about 2.5 inch deep mortise. Hopefully that's going to be long enough. I may want to go longer than that. I'm not entirely sure. I'll see what I can get out of it. Then, what you see clamped up of all these clamps is these clamps are holding the boards down onto the bench, keeping things from sliding around. These hold them together. These clamps are stops so that I can just bump the end of the edge guide right into the stop, and that's the length of the mortise. Because I'm going to do this in stages, it's helpful to have the mortise, have the router stop in the same place at each end rather than trying to do it by eye. This little guy here and way down here, this little 2x4, same thing, it's a stop on either end. It's just that the base overshoots the boards that I'm cutting into, so I have to extend it. So I've clamped a board to this to get me out further, and then I clamped a board to that board to get me a stop. Same goes here, there's just an extension and then another board. So same thing, just a block and an extension so I can bump up against it and stop. I've run through a couple of dry runs just to make sure that it starts and stops where I want it to. I have to keep in mind which direction to go, because the way the router bit is spinning will either push the edge guide away from the board or pull it in, and I want it to always be pulling in so that it snugs the edge guide, the fence, up against the board. So a little bit of setup that was needed. It took a little doing, but I'm ready now to route them. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a depth, and route all of them. Pick another depth, route them all, and just keep running around the whole game until I get it done. I think I'm going to go that route because I think that's safest. So we're going to get set up for our first depth, and then I'll bring you back when I am starting to cut. All right, whew, that was a task, but it's done, and I believe we got about 2.5 inches deep. Oh yeah, we got over 2.5, just barely over, looks like just at 2.5 actually. Yes, we can deal with that. So, oh, that one looks a little bit shy of the 2.5 actually. I'm gonna check that one. I think that one's missing a pass. Yeah, I think that one missed a pass. I'm going to throw all the gear back on and do one more quickie, but 2.5 inch deep mortise into the stiles, and we'll do some tenons next after this. So we're going to consider the stiles basically ready for whatever is necessary. They're pretty much, I'm going to call them essentially done. They're going to get sanded and whatnot and all that, but the rest of things are going to be worked out on the rails. So there'll be a groove. I forgot about the groove. Yeah, we'll do a groove as well, but I'll do that groove later. Might be a stop groove. We'll see. We shall see. Anywho, so we're going to call that good for the day. All right.